right, chapter 14 of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 8. It says here in Proverbs 14:8, "The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of the fool is deceit." So, who here knows what a prudent person is? What is the definition of being prudent? Brother Doug. Yes, careful, who has wise concerning future things, who can see things coming, can see things happening, who has understanding in that way. Very much like how you defined it, who is that understanding and that wisdom. So Proverbs chapter 14 verse 8 is comparing the prudent, the understanding that the prudent's wisdom is understanding his ways. So a prudent person is a wise person, but how is he wise concerning foresight? It's understanding his own way. And so what we have to realize that if we want to be wise, if we want to be a prudent person, if we want to be able to take care of things and get things in order, we first have to understand our own way. And a lot of people would think if you're alive, if you're living, that you are considering your way, but really few people consider their way today. We see that he compares, verse 8, that he compares the wisdom of the prudent to the folly of a fool. What's the folly of a fool? That's kind of saying the weakness of the weak. That's what defines him. That's what makes him. So if he's comparing the folly of a fool is deceit, then he's saying that the thing that makes a prudent person, that the thing that makes a prudent person strong is understanding his own way. So consider your way today, basically. Consider your way. What way are you walking? Where are you heading? Why are you on that path that you're on? And consider your way. You have to understand your way. Not just know where you're going, but understand what you're doing. What you're doing, that you have to understand your future, that you have to look ahead to the future, and you have to make plans for the future. That today is not all there is, and although the Lord could return at any moment, we know that He very well may not return in our lifetime. I mean, we don't know. He might not, and we have to be prepared that if He doesn't, that we're in here for the long haul to serve the Lord for the rest of our life, and that we may not be ending our servanthood in a week. We might be ending that in a couple decades, a couple years, whatever it takes to get through your lifetime. And so we have to understand that we have to consider our way today, that we will not be able to help other people if we do not consider our way. That we will not be able to minister if we do not consider our own way. That we will not be a prudent person if we do not understand our way. So if we go down to verse 15, we kind of see this explained a little bit more in Proverbs 14, verse 15. It says, "The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going." Again, the prudent man is looking well to his going. But he's comparing this now to a simple person who believes every word. So what does that mean for us is that a prudent person doesn't believe every word people say. That when you hear a story, and I think anybody with any amount of wisdom and understanding, when you hear a story, you don't believe every word. Because you have lived long enough to hear both sides of stories, to give your side of stories, and you understand that when you hear a story, that there is two sides to it. Therefore, you don't believe everything everybody says, that you don't believe everything you hear, that you don't believe everything you're told. We understand that the Bereans were more noble than those in Thessalonica, and that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the Scriptures daily to see whether those things are so. That's what set the Bereans apart from the Thessalonians. And so this is what sets a fool apart from a prudent person, is that you do not believe every word you hear. You know, in the age of misinformation and false information on both sides, it's amazing how much false information gets shared and how much false information gets believed in the era of so much information. And that's why it's important to look up things, research things, look into things, and not just believe everything you're told. So we see that, verse 15, that the simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. So the reason that the prudent man does not believe every word is because he is looking well to his going. The reason that a simple man believes every word is because he is not looking well to where he is going. So if you do not want to have a right walk, if you do not want to have a good reputation, and if you do not want to have the things that makes a prudent man, then go ahead and believe everything. Go ahead and believe everything you're told. Go ahead and believe everything you read. And go ahead and, like we see in verse 8, the folly of the fool is deceit. To be deceived and to deceive others. That is the folly of the fool. But we know that a prudent man is going to walk in truth. The prudent man is going to walk in the light of the Word of God. The prudent man is going to be led by the Spirit of God. The prudent man is going to be led by wisdom, which is the fear of the Lord. The beginning of wisdom is to, of course, to fear God. So that's the beginning of wisdom. And so we need to, like we see here, look well to our goings. Verse 18 now. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 18, it says, the simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. So, again, a prudent man is a knowledgeable person. A prudent man is not one who is foolish. A prudent man is not one who is not, if you will, well educated. Educated in the Word of God. Educated in the ways of the Lord. Educated in those things that matter. But he is a man who is crowned with knowledge. You know, if you were to define your defining characteristic, and you had to write that down, what would that be? What defines you? If you were crowned with something, what is that thing that you're crowned with? Are you crowned with knowledge? Are you crowned with wisdom? Are you crowned with understanding? And so, this is coming from the wisest man that ever lived. And if you think about it, how great and important wisdom is, and how great and important wisdom was, because as we see when Solomon obtained that wisdom, how that the Lord said he could have asked for a long life, how he could have asked for wealth. And he goes through a couple things Solomon could have asked for, but yet he asked for wisdom. And you think how perfect it was asking for wisdom, because with wisdom, all those things usually follow. If you're a wise person, you're probably going to live long, because only a fool would live in such a way that would shorten his life. A fool would live in poverty, because a wise person would be able to foresee those things and be able to spend his money well, save his money, work for his money, and all those things follow wisdom. So that is why a prudent man is crowned with knowledge, is because a prudent man is one who is looking forward into the future and not just living on the circumstances of today. And that is what we are seeing. A huge problem is that everybody thinks that what you do today is what matters, and that it's just live in the moment and do whatever you want to do, because that's what's important. And nobody has any kind of wisdom or any kind of foresight into the future to understand that today is not all there is, and that there is a tomorrow, and that you are going to be in that tomorrow, and that you have to make preparations for that tomorrow. Now, we understand that the Bible says, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink. You know, we're not worrying over those things, and those things do not consume us, but we do need to have a rightful respect for what the future holds, and we have to look forward to what the future holds, and not just today. And we understand, of course, that the Lord is going to take care of tomorrow, and the Lord is going to take care of those things, but still, we have to be prudent. We have to be looking forward to those things. We have to have foresight. We have to have hindsight, and we have to have, live in today. So keep those things in mind. Proverbs, what I'm not talking about today, if we go to verse 16, what I'm not talking about today is self-confidence. Because you see here in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 16, it says, a wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. So I'm not encouraging us to have self-confidence in ourselves, because we see that a fool is confident. And so I'm not encouraging confidence in self, because that would be self-deception, and that would not be prudence, because we've all been to that place where we have deceived ourselves and we have not been able to live up to what we expected from ourselves, or what we've planned, or the decisions that we've made. So of course we understand that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know? We know that the book of Proverbs says that whoever trusts his heart is a fool, and to not trust our heart. So I'm not encouraging us to be a strong, self-confident individual, but what I am encouraging us to do is live with that attitude in the power of God. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3. Here we see the definition of a prudent individual. This verse would be a good one to take to heart. Good verse to live by. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3. So as we define a prudent person being one who lives for the future, one who looks ahead to the future. So Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3 defines him as, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. So a prudent man foreseeth the evil. So today, can we foresee the evil? Can we see what's coming? Can we see what the future holds? Of course, I'm not talking about each individual thing for tomorrow and you can see every little detail, but I'm talking about the general future of things, the depravity of man going down. Yes, we do grow older, just making plans for that. I was talking to older gentlemen, depends on how you define older, 75-ish, yes, older than me. And so he says to me, are you saving for retirement? I said, well, yeah, I'm investing in my 401k. He's like, that's good, because getting old was never in my reality. And then one day I woke up and realized that I'm an old man and I have no savings for retirement. So that's good, keep saving, because one day you're going to wake up and realize that you're old, but you'll have that set apart. And that's just something financial. But still, the book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom, both for spiritual life and for practical life things. And so that is just an example of being prudent, realizing that I will not be young forever, realizing that I will not be able to work forever, realizing that if the Lord tarries his coming, so to speak, I don't know why we all say that, but if the Lord does not return in my lifetime, that I will need plans for retirement, because that is being prudent and preparing for the future. Also being prudent spiritually speaking, is that realizing that he that thinketh he standeth, take heed lest he fall. That attitude of realizing that you are not capable of standing forever, realizing that you will make mistakes, and being honest with yourself in that respect, and admitting that, and realizing that you are not perfect, and realizing that every decision you make is not perfect, and being willing to admit that. And so just living in that attitude of realizing that the future has held things, unforeseen circumstances for great men of God, and that as people of God, that we are going to fall to those same things. An example of that is David. And it's interesting that the first time prudence is mentioned in the Bible is referring to David. I think it's 1 Samuel chapter 22. I didn't write it down, but somebody was talking about David, how they had seen David, how that he was a man of God and was following the Lord, and that he was a man prudent in all areas of life. So if you want an example of a prudent man, look to David. I mean, David, he wanted to build the tabernacle, and when he realized he couldn't, he put everything together for his son Solomon, who would, because he was a prudent man and one who prepared for the future. And, it kind of goes as for missions. If we can't build the tabernacle, then prepare it for people who can. Not exactly the tabernacle, but I'm just talking about the work of the Lord. And so, David, though, he was a prudent man, but yet he still fell to the flesh. He was a prudent man, but yet he still was a man who made mistakes. So again, I'm just reminding you, I'm not talking about living a perfect life, a sinless life. I'm just talking about looking forward to the future and being ready for that. And isn't it interesting that Solomon was the son of a prudent man? That the wisest man who ever lived, how did Solomon know how to ask for that If Solomon didn't have his magnificent wisdom to ask for wisdom, how did Solomon know to ask for wisdom? Is because he was the son of David, who was a prudent man, and who had raised Solomon to be a prudent individual, and who had made Solomon realize that wealth and long life and the death of your enemies is not all that life consists of, and that the most important thing is to be a wise individual who feared the Lord. And so that is why Solomon chose wisdom to begin with, is because David was a prudent individual. And so that's the power of being prudent. That's the power in raising children to be prudent. That's the power in raising people and teaching people, and teaching people to be prudent as well, and living your own life to be prudent. That the mistakes of today can haunt you. That you can't just leave things in the past sometimes. We always talk about how the past is past, and yes, in the Lord Jesus Christ, the past is past. But still, scars are left. And you know what? The mistakes that you make today, yes, they can be fixed, but they may not be totally abolished, if you will. Those things still haunt. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 4. This is what I want to look at. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 4. It says here in 1 Thessalonians 4:4 that every one of you should know how to possess his vessel in sanctification and honor. And so, the ability and the wisdom to learn how to possess your vessel. The ability and the wisdom to know how to live your life. Again, living your life for the Lord, but understanding that it is your life to live, that you have to make those decisions, that you're responsible for those decisions that are made, or the lack of preparedness that you gave yourself for. That it is important to learn how to possess your vessel. That is why we see the prudent understandeth his way. The prudent person doesn't understand the way of everybody else. It's not the prudent person's job to look to everybody else's way. Now, if a person is prudent and has the gift of prudency, if that's a word, he is going to be able to look at other people's life and see where it's leading. But he is not necessarily responsible for everybody else's life. He is responsible for his life. We understand that a prudent man looketh well to whose goings? His goings. That a prudent person is going to look well to his goings. We understand that a prudent person is crowned with knowledge. He's not crowning everybody else with knowledge. And so, again, I am not limiting our life to those things. I am not limiting our life to only living for ourselves. But what I am encouraging us to do is self-responsibility. That is what a prudent person is he is responsible for his self. And we understand that if we are just prudent in that area, that that kind of leaves out the Great Commission, that kind of leaves out a whole lot of things. So again, I'm not limiting ourselves to only being prudent people, but we have to increase that sense of being prudent. We have to increase that sense of looking forward to the future for our life and taking care of ourselves and understanding that we need to learn how to possess our vessel. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Whose heart are you supposed to be keeping? You need to be keeping your heart. You can't keep everybody else's heart. Oftentimes we get concentrated on keeping everybody else's heart. And you know what? That is part of being like Christ, is wanting to care for people and wanting to take care of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we do have to realize that as badly as we want to take care of people and keep everybody else's heart, that we can't do that. Because we are only in control of one person's heart, and that heart's ourselves. And so that is the heart that we have to concentrate on. And we have to make sure that our heart is right with God. And we have to make sure that our heart is in the right place. And we have to make sure that we are taking care of our heart and guarding our heart. Because if we do not guard our heart, then our heart will be damaged, and out of it are the issues of life. And every area will be affected if we are not taking care of our heart. So if we are not guarding our ways, if we are not looking well to our way, then we will not be able to look well to the way of others for very long. And you can do that for a time. And you can do that for a season. You cannot run a long time on concentrating on everybody else's heart and not looking at your own. That's a two-step thing. I'm not saying stop looking at other people's heart, and I'm not saying stop worrying about other people. Again, that is the care of the church, to be concerned about one another. I'm not saying don't do that, but what I am saying is make sure that your heart is right with God first, and make sure that you are following the Lord. Make sure that you are being a prudent individual and taking care of your walk with the Lord first. Because if you are not walking with the Lord, you will not be able to encourage other people to walk with the Lord. If you're laying on the ground, you can't help other people up. So you have to make sure that you never end up on the ground. You can't light yourself on fire to keep other people warm, is what I'm saying. Is that you have to be concerned about serving the Lord, because Romans chapter 14 and verse 12. Romans chapter 14 and verse 12. This is something we live for. This is what our walk with the Lord, this is the goal of our walk with the Lord, is Romans chapter 14 and verse 12. How it says here, Romans 14:12. So then, every one of us shall give an account of himself to God. Let us not therefore judge one another any more, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. So again, we understand that when we are expecting to give an account of ourselves to God, that does affect how we treat other people. Again, I'm not saying don't worry about people. What I am saying is that every man's going to give an account of himself to God. You are going to have to give an account of who? Yourself to God. You're not giving an account of anybody else. You're not giving an account of anybody else's actions. The only actions of other people that you have to give an account of is if they stumble over your stumbling block, basically. That make sure that you are not doing that, but make sure that you are living right with God, that you are following the Lord, that you have that relationship with the Lord, and that you are walking in the way of God, that you are a prudent individual giving heed to how he was walking. Because if you're walking in the way of God, you're not going to be putting a stumbling block in front of other people. If you're walking in the way of God, you are not going to be given to folly, but you are going to be removing stumbling blocks from people. You know, where we live on the intersection, our driveway is like 100 feet from the intersection. So if I'm coming up to my house, I have the crossroad, and then, 100 feet, my driveway. And if there's a car coming, waiting to cross the street or to turn or whatever, I don't put my directional signal on. Because what they think is that I'm going to go down the road here. And then they pull out in front of me because I'm passing up the road and going to my driveway. So I have to realize that the directional signal is ambiguous for them. That directional signal can be more confusing than good. So, yeah, I'm not going to turn that on because they think I'm going to turn down the road instead of passing up the road and going in my driveway. And so, I've learned that from experience because it's happened. And so I have to realize that is basically a stumbling block to other drivers. That signal, they don't understand that signal. They think that signal means something else. So I just don't give any signal and just pass them up, then flip my signal on for 5 feet before I turn into the driveway. And so that is my example of a stumbling block. Is that, sometimes we can give confusing signals. Sometimes signals get crossed. Sometimes, yes, I am turning left. I'm just not turning left here, but they don't understand it because they think, because most cars don't pull in my driveway, most cars turn down the road, that they think that that's where I'm going. And so think of that as a stumbling block. How are people going to perceive your signals? Yes, you may say it's that you're walking with God. Yes, you may say it's for the Lord, but that's why it's important to be crystal clear with people. That's why it's important to have your yeas, yeas, and your nays, nays, as the Bible puts it. To just be yes or no. Not confusing, not giving stumbling blocks, but consider the future, consider your way to help other people along the way, because you are going to give an account of yourself to God. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 22. Guarding against accusations, guarding against those things, because accusations can damage a Christian's reputation for years to come. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 22. It says here in 1 Timothy 5:22, lay hands suddenly on no man, neither be partaker of other men's sins. Keep thyself pure. Of course, this is a command to Timothy, but one that we can take heed to is to keep ourselves pure. Is that we do have to keep ourselves pure. We cannot be partaker of another man's evil. We cannot be partaker of another man's sins. And how does it happen? By laying hands on somebody suddenly. It's by giving them approval too fast. It's by giving them approval at all. It is by not being careful how we walk. And so Timothy is supposed to be a prudent individual. Timothy is supposed to be a wise individual. Timothy is supposed to be taking heed to himself and to the flock of which the Lord has given him the oversight. And since that's Timothy's job, he has to keep himself pure. He cannot be laying hands on anybody suddenly. He cannot be approving people who he's not sure of. And that is why it's important. That is why it's important to be sure in your own mind, not to just do things for other people's approval. Now, is the person who Timothy might be laying his hands on, and who he probably did lay hands on. He probably laid his hands on, approved and sent out and ordained plenty of people. So it's not like Timothy withdrew himself like a hermit into a mountain and said, no, not laying hands on anybody. Paul said, don't lay your hands on anybody. That's not what Paul's saying. He's just saying to keep yourself pure, not to do it suddenly. And so think about Timothy's situation. Timothy, is it time yet? I'll see. Well, why do you got to wait so long? Why can't you just do it now? Why can't you just, lay your hands on this individual? It'll be a great thing. And you know what? Timothy's probably thinking, it might be, but I have to keep myself pure. I have to be concerned about my walk with God. I have to be concerned that I do not hurt this ministry that the Lord has given me. One day I'm going to give an account to God. I'm not going to give an account. The Lord is probably not going to criticize Timothy. Timothy, you waited too long to lay your hands on this individual. If it's ridiculous, he probably would. But I'm just saying that the Lord is probably not going to criticize us for walking with him too closely. The Lord is going to have an issue if we do, as Timothy, lay our hands on somebody quickly, approve of them too quickly, and hurt our walk with God. So that is why it's important to keep ourselves pure, and that is how we do it, is by being careful, taking our time, being discerning, being prudent, and understanding that if we are defiled, that it ruins our whole ministry, it ruins our whole walk with the Lord, and therefore we cannot be defiled in that way. We cannot be hurt in that way, that we have to keep ourselves pure, because we are giving an account to God. We are not, if people encourage us to do wrong, which people every day of our life are going to be encouraging us to do wrong, and we give in, we cannot blame them when we give an account of ourselves to God, because they are not responsible for how we walked, and they are not responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your walk with God. There are no witnesses in the courtroom of God. You cannot call people in, because you know what? The Lord sees all. The Lord understands all. And he has seen, his wisdom, his foresight, he has seen all that happen. And he is not taken by surprise by the actions that we make or by the lies that we are led by. So he already knows all that. So we cannot call in a witness in God's courtroom. And if he wants us to give an account of ourselves, we are going to give an account of ourselves. We'll wind down with Proverbs chapter 11. Consider this, Proverbs chapter 11. Striking a right balance between things. Here in Proverbs chapter 11. In verse 24, Proverbs 11:24, it says here, there is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than is meet, but it tendeth to poverty. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. He that withholdeth corn, the people shall curse, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it. So we look at the liberal soul shall be made fat. He that watereth will be watered himself. And you know what? When we give, the Lord's going to give back in return. That anything we sacrifice, the Lord can repay. And that every sacrifice we make for the Lord is worth it. We have to understand that that's why it's important to be a giving person, that's why it's important to be a liberal person, to be, giving of the blessings that the Lord has given us, that to be passing those things on, to be a conduit of the Lord's blessings, and by all means, giving yourself to benefit the ministry of the Lord. But then we go to verse 15. It says, He that is surety for a stranger shall smart for it, and he that hateth suretyship is sure. Very poetic. But basically, as chapter 6 verse 1 says, not to make thyself surety for thy friends, not to make thyself surety for any person. And what is that? Is that not to be a co-signer for things, basically. And so on one hand, we have him encouraging us to be a liberal person, to be a giving person. And on the other hand, he says not to be surety for thy friend, not to be surety for a stranger, not to be surety for anybody, not to sign yourself up for those things or to put yourself at odds in that way. So we have to learn that balance, to be a liberal person and to be a giving person, but also realizing that we cannot, as he warns here, to put ourselves in that position where we are signed up, where we are contracted, when we have made a decision that we can't come through with. And money has ruined so many friendships. Money has made so many people enemies. And people asking for money, anybody who's ever had anything nice knows how much people want to borrow it. And you know what? I think we've all made decisions to let people borrow things because we trust them. We've also made decisions to not let people do it because we're prudent in that way and we don't want our thing destroyed. But anyway, learning to strike that balance. Learning not to be surety, but also learning to be a liberal person. And that's where prudency comes from, is looking ahead to the future, having the Lord's understanding in things, looking and saying, yes, this person, they genuinely need help. And if this person genuinely needs help, then I'm going to help them. I have time for a story. I don't think I've ever told this story. Doug was there on our way back from the Ark. A guy pulled up to me at a gas station when I was getting gas. And first thing he did was compliment my Trump sticker, back when it was still on my car. But first thing he did was compliment that. And he's sitting on his seat with the Bible on the passenger seat and a map on his lap. And he says, I'm trying to get to St. Louis, and I just found out that I'm lost. I'm thinking, yeah, you're in Medina. You're nowhere close to St. Louis. And that's over by Cleveland, for anybody who doesn't know where Medina is. That's not very close to St. Louis. And he goes, and I'm almost out of money, and I need money for gas. And so I know he's, anybody who's like that, you kind of figure they're trying to pull a con on you. And I said, all right, I'll put gas in your tank. He goes, no. I have a rewards card to the gas station down the street, and I'd like to earn some reward points. Can you just give me cash? And I said, I don't have cash on me, although I did. I don't have cash on me. And he goes, well, there's an ATM inside. I mean, yeah, wow. And I go, no, I don't give cash to people. I said, I don't know what they're going to spend it on, so I don't give cash to people. And he goes, well, you could buy me a gift card. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? Gift card, cash, it's all the same. And I said, no, I can't. He's like, well, that gas station has food. Like, I think this one does too, and I don't mind buying you food either. And, it was longer than that. He kept begging for money. Man, I'd do anything for you if you asked. And I said, I am offering to buy you food and get you gas, but I'm not going to give you money. So that, and it went on and on and on. I've never seen somebody so pushy for money. Running low on gas, but sitting there in his idling car. But anyway, that is the example of being prudent, because we have wisdom to discern. Yes, if this person needs help, yeah, I'll buy them food, I'll buy them gas, I'll pay bills for them if they need it. As long as it's not too big. But I'll do stuff like that if somebody genuinely needs help. But no, I'm not going to give them cash. I'm not going to be surety for them. I'm not going to be partaker in their evil deeds. I'm not going to lay hands on them quickly because I am a prudent individual. Maybe you're tired of hearing that word prudent. because I am. But the idea is to be prudent today. The idea is to look well to your way, to live with that reputation, to be concerned about the stumbling blocks that you're putting in front of other people, to be concerned about how you're walking, because you are going to give an account of yourself to God. And you know what? That is the end game of prudency. Is that, yes, we're looking ahead to little things, to next week, to next year, to the end of your life. But what is the end game? The end game is giving an account of yourself to God. And that is the ultimate definition of a prudent person, one who's looking ahead to that day, one who's looking ahead past this life and looking ahead to the next life and wanting to be pleasing to God. And if you want to be pleasing to God, I think that you're going to be prudent, that you're going to make those right decisions, because you're going to be making decisions governed by your desire to please the Lord. And I don't think that you're going to be making wrong decisions in order to please the Lord. Now, some people are confused. There's this one guy at work on third shift. The Lord just called him to be a massage therapist. Yep. I don't think that decision is governed by the Spirit of God. I'm just saying. Never read in the Bible where anybody's been called to be a massage therapist. But you know what? That's what I'm saying, is that some people may make those dumb decisions and give credit to God for it. I'm not talking about that, because I think that if you truly want to please God, you're going to find another way to do it than being a massage therapist. So that is somebody who is either incredibly deceived, this is on live stream, incredibly naive. You get what I'm saying, okay? I don't have to go any further. But those decisions are not made by somebody who wants to please God. Those decisions are made by somebody who wants to please himself and blame God for it. And so today, be careful that you're not doing that. Be careful that you're not making decisions to please and honor yourself in order and under the guise of doing it for the Lord. So today, serve the Lord, walk in prudency, look forward to the future, be concerned with yourself, be worried about yourself. In our day and age, and in our attitude of being selfless and wanting to serve God, we often talk about not being concerned about yourself. And I'm not saying being worried about it, but what I am saying is making sure that you're walking with the Lord so that you can help others. And let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just pray that, Lord, what I said was clear today, and I just pray that you help us follow you. And Lord, give us strength and give us wisdom and help us to be prudent individuals. Or give us that wisdom that we need so that we can be concerned about our way, so that we can help others be concerned about theirs. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Scotty.